Okay, we gotta talk about Charmed. We gotta talk about Charmed. And I know some of you don't like when I talk about TV and film on this channel. We talk about a lot of other stuff. But I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I'm sure some of you are Charmed fans because, like all gay boys, I have an affinity for witchcraft. That's what Charmed is all about. And even if you're not a fellow gay boy who has an affinity for witchcraft, I will explain to you why you should care about Charmed. Before I do that, before I explain to you why you should care about Charmed, I just want to point out that I'm trying to rock a specific aesthetic today because of this video, okay? I should have brought out the ring light, but I didn't, and I kind of like this stylistic choice of like, it's a little bit dark on my face, and then the light suddenly shows up. It's giving Book of Shadows chic, okay? And then the shirt, I just feel like the shirt is giving Salem Witch Trials chic. You know, I feel like I should be sweeping hay or something in this, but I wanted to bring a little bit of sex appeal still, which is very Charmed, very Charmed. Yes, they're great actresses, but they definitely brought the sex appeal. Shannon Doherty, Holly Marie Combs, Alyssa Milano, and eventually Rose McGowan coming into the mix of the show. So here's why you should care about Charmed, okay? Charmed, for a while, was the longest running TV show with all female leads. So it was a record-breaking show. By the way, I didn't know it was that big of a deal as a show when it was on, because this was pre-social media. So you didn't know about, like, other than water cooler conversation, right? Like, if you knew somebody who watched it and you would talk to them at work or at school or whatever, like, you had no way of knowing there was a whole community of hardcore fans. Charmed is one of those cult following shows, okay? If you go on Reddit today, you'll see a million posts about it. If you YouTube it, you'll see that they do all these conventions like Comic-Con, and the actresses go and answer questions. They do Q&As and they do meet and greets. So it's a thing. Still to this day, it's a thing. And there's a few reasons why I think Charmed has really resonated with audiences. What they always say at these conventions, and what some of the producers of the show have said, is that fundamentally it was a show about sisters who happen to be witches as opposed to witches who happen to be sisters. So it really was like a family-driven show. It's the chemistry between the sisters and their family dynamics, and that they're just trying to have normal lives as women who happen to be witches in San Francisco, California. But the other thing that was vital to the show, I believe, was the mythology. The mythology was so great. There were consistent themes and names for certain kinds of characters in the sort of supernatural realm. And it was a very self-referential show. So like, you know, season 5, they referenced some demon that they fought the first season. And it's one of those shows where if you're a new person suddenly tuning into a later episode, you might not really know what's happening. But if you're a fan who's been watching consistently, it's fun because you feel like you're a part of it. You understand those nuances and those references and those details when they're flipping through pages of the Book of Shadows and you see a familiar face from a previous season. So to me, that's what was so special about this show. Okay, all of that is great, but why am I bringing this up, right? Why is everybody talking about Charmed again suddenly? Well, these leading women of Charmed, the actresses, have been doing a lot of conventions in recent years because there still is such a hardcore cult following, I guess, of fans who will pay to go to these events and do the Q&As and the meet and greets and talk to these actresses and get like their autograph or whatever, right? But fans have noticed now for years that Alyssa Milano is never at these conventions. One of the lead actresses is never there with the other women. She's done a few on her own, maybe with some of the male actors who are quite frankly kind of secondary to the show. The male characters on the show are kind of like the accessories of the show. It's really about the women who are sisters, right? So for a while, fans have been like, that's kind of weird. You know, it's this show about sisterhood, female empowerment, and yet they never meet together. But for such a long time, there's always been this running story that Alyssa Milano essentially got Shannon Doherty kicked off the show. Shannon Doherty left after the 3rd season, and it was a very controversial, like a big tabloid sensation kind of thing, but the story was never really clear. And a few months back, Shannon Doherty did a podcast episode kind of revealing how things went down. And so it kind of resurfaced all of this on top of these conventions where it's been blatantly obvious to fans that there's one lead actress who's never there. So literally this past weekend, there was a convention where all of them showed up for the first time, but Alyssa Milano was there on a separate day. And my friend sent me this like ad on social media, and it almost feels like a fake meme because it's pointing out right in front of your face that one of them is basically sequestered while the other three are doing everything together. So what's fascinating about this is there's kind of two camps, right? There's the one camp that's like, well, if three people all have a problem with this one person, clearly there's something up with this chick, Alyssa Milano. And then there's the other camp, which is more so the camp that I fall under, where I just don't like to see somebody get ganged up upon no matter what. Like, I always root for the underdog. So just to see that vibe of 3 against 1, I inherently feel for the person who's there by themselves and just having to like do things on their own. But this weekend, you guys, it's the first time that Alyssa Milano has been vocal and finally said like, enough. I'm finally gonna speak up because, you know, it's the elephant in the room. I'm here by myself at this panel. It's been so long, but still there's this drama. And so her saying anything has now pissed off the others, I guess. And you have Holly Marie Combs on social media, like responding and sounding kind of passive aggressive. And for me, as somebody who watched the show, right, and who really believed in the on-screen chemistry of these women together as, you know, as sisters on the show, it's so mind-blowing for me to think, wow, there must have been so much tension behind the scenes. So on the one hand, you're like, they were total pros at their jobs. But on the other hand, you're like, how juvenile that they all had this amazing opportunity. They still have an amazing opportunity because they're getting invited decades later to these conventions to talk about their characters. All these years later, all these fans want to participate and be involved in this. And they still can't let go of this stuff that happened literally over 20 years ago. The irony of a show being about female empowerment and sisterhood, and it's all about the women coming together to fight evil. And you realize behind the scenes, the women responsible for the inspiration of these characters can't even get along. And what's further ironic is that the record of that show of being the longest lasting or the longest running show with all female leads, it was replaced by Desperate Housewives, which also was notorious for having drama behind the scenes. And it makes you wonder, like, do women have that hard of a time getting along? Like, are women that high maintenance and difficult? Or is it just like a Hollywood actress thing? Like, what is this about that these shows that are iconic shows that were so successful and gave some of these women complete careers and new chapters in their careers, millions to live off of, millions of dollars to live off of, that they would engage in such petty bullshit is so gnarly to me. It's kind of comical, but it's also disturbing. Like, it's so petty that now all the fans are engaging on social media about it because I think people want to get to the bottom of what's the truth because it's not clear. But it's so interesting how now the fans are like trying to get to the bottom of it. Like, welcome to 2024. This is on social media. People are trying to unearth the truth about these dynamics. But really, to me, it seems to all point to one simple thing, which is ego. It's all ego. I'm curious what you guys think about this, especially if you're a fan of the show or if you've been following the stories lately this past weekend about this whole convention that they're all at. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you're a fan of the show, I want to know what your favorite season was and why, or if you have a favorite episode. Mine was season 4. I loved season 4 because it was this transitional part of the show where Shannon Doherty's character Prue was killed off the show and this new witch came into the fold, Paige. And just the tension of that between the sisters on the show, like this awkward transition for the family. I love that part of the show and the storylines that season. And it's ironic because it would seem it was maybe not so fake, the tension felt during season 4 between the witches. Catch you guys next time.